So to each their own location. We're at Alva for Eva and Matt's launch of the wee Alba book. Yeah, Alex Salmon. Aye, so getting a wee coffee tea and a biscuit and that. And they'll be made to come shortly.
Today, one of the last
Marking Denise, who ran me from Dundee. What a beautiful, beautiful area this is, and it's absolutely stunning. So I'm trying to be reminded of the wonders of the wee cooking.
for sale.
Actually, I would do that. Actually, I'm from London. It's my hometown. But maybe your mother lived there.
Canal Street.
Well, I was in Barking at that point, but the canal ran beside Alva Station Preston Road, so the canal was the top of the swing park. There you are. Well, it must be a great place. If you move from Liffey here, that must be quite something. So anyway, it's absolutely stunning. This is a part of a tour we're doing around Scotland, and what we're introducing is the wee Alba book. And candidates like Eva and Matt across the country are promoting this, as well as promoting their own campaigns, their own priorities for the local communities. So I've done 8 meetings in the last week. I've got another 6 this week. And Kevin Castle, who I think is coming here in the next few days, has been doing them. I've been on a shake, and Neil Hanley's been doing them. So all in all, it's a really bundle of meetings we'll do. And it's really quite interesting because, we haven't been able to do these things. You think about it, we launched Alpha as a political party a year ago. And in that entire year, we've not been able to do what you normally do in politics, what really matters in politics, which is having meetings like this in communities across Scotland. But now we can, so we're making up for lost time, and we're doing lots and lots of meetings. And they're really, really very interesting. I was in Lockheed last night, in Dundee, and here, and I was in Invercargill last Friday, in village in just the south of Aberdeen. So, whole variety of communities. There's some very common themes. And the 3 things that we're saying about the role of Alva is as follows. Firstly, it's really important that when I was first minister, I decided that what I'm trying to do is build a record of competence in running the Scottish government. So that people would have confidence if you could run the Scottish government, you can health and education and all around the school. I mean, you cast your mind back. There was a Labour peer who became an NSP by accident because they lost all the seats, so he got on the list, called Lord George Fuchs. And about 10 years ago, Lord George Fuchs did an interview. He was absolutely furious. He said, you know what they're doing? He says, they are creating a situation where services in Scotland are appreciably better than services in England. And the interview of Colin Mackay said, but isn't that what they're really doing? I said, yes, but they're doing it another. Because what you worry about was things like people's prescription, the education, get rid of the vegetables, happening in Scotland, which weren't happening in England, which he said, oh, that's going to make people believe in independence, we'll see how things can be made back with that. So it was a deliberate plan. Unfortunately, now we're at the stage where, well, I'm not going to say wrong with the case. And the whole range of issues, stretching from ferries to the selling off of the offshore wind licenses, the Scottish Government is coming under justifiable attack for lack of competence. Now, Alba as a party can't do much about changing government in the short term. But what we can do is make sure that the case for independence isn't dragged down by the day-to-day problems of the government. So it's really important now that we have the case of independence argued out of government, as well as inside government, but by people who are not encumbered by the faults and foibles of the current administration. So that's one thing. The second thing is, it's a wide range from 2014. I have to say that despite a lot from Flat Land, this was the first result in the referendum.
That was hot, crazy.
And I was sitting there. I was sitting in Alba. My friend come down to Edinburgh. I'm waiting for the first result to come through from Flat Land. And I knew that this could take my quickest of the Scotland. Basically, it's quite hard to Scotland. And so when it was 55-45 here, I knew it was going to be 55-45 across Scotland. A wee bit of hope and Dundee came out, of course, but so while my wife turned to me and saw the result, I said, "Oh, what's that mean?" And I, as you do in these situations, over quite why I said, "It's the first result," but I knew obviously in my heart that it would tend to expect the results for the next to come. Of course, you can look at it in this 2 weeks. You can either think, "Oh, what a chance!" But an amazing opportunity missed. How on earth could we, kick the penalty over the bar or whatever? Or you can say, well, actually, given that we started the campaign at 28%, 45% was the back. So I'm in the hearts of my life. So I've seen many matches where we told that the Hearts have played okay well, we lost the game. So I'm not saying that's a victory, I'm just saying we came a long way in the campaign. But the world we had in 2014 is not the one of the 2022. A lot of things have happened. Brexit's happened. Pandemic, war in Europe, all things have changed. And therefore the case for independence has to change. And the case we put back in 2014 is not the same case as you put in 2022 or beyond. And to take one clear example, Brexit. Now, obviously, I argued against Brexit. It was a stupid idea. I think that's going to be demonstrated. Johnson is going to be an absolute catastrophe. We know that. But how does it change the case for independence? Well, we can't pretend Brexit didn't happen because it did. And therefore, we have to address how you argue for independence in the reality of the UK is out of the European Union. For example, you can't pretend that you get back into the European Union like that. Now, Scotland is a very popular country. It always amazes me how popular Scotland is. Every single one of us probably, if we've been, traveling or holiday or whatever. And as soon as you say you're Scottish, doors are open. I'm not sure there's going to say you're Scottish in my English, but it's funny. And it's also popular. People like Scotland. Lots of European countries love Scotland. Germany loves Scotland. Loves being Scottish. It's absolutely true. But that doesn't mean that just because they like us, we'll get a special deal. It doesn't work like that. If you think about the Brexit negotiations, that guy Barney, Michael Barney. Michael Barney is a French novelist politician. I mean, French novelism. It's a hard school. People are brought up in a hard negotiating school, and it makes the Labour Party a little like a tea party. When French novelism is tough political philosophy. But the idea of something like Michel Barney and say, "I'm going to go to Scotland, I love hen, I love haggis, I love bagpipes, I love whiskey. Therefore, I'm going to give Scotland a special deal to Johnson. He would negotiate as he did in Brexit in the interests of the people he's negotiating for. So we can't pretend that we get back into the European Union like that. It would take 5 years. And then for the 3% case, it says, oh, we'll go back to the European Union, people will see through it. And what you have to happen is you can negotiate. There's a huge weakness. Because we don't have any established trading relationships, you basically negotiate with them, you have your over a buy in every point of the negotiation. So what does that mean? Does that mean you just steal it? Shut shop, say, nice idea, have a chance, but let's take it. No. It means there was something called the European Free Trade Association, EFTA. Now what's EFTA? EFTA is 4 countries, Switzerland, Liechtenstein, Iceland and Norway. 4 countries in there. It can be a bad place because each of these 4 countries are among the top 10 most prosperous countries on earth. They're head of population. So it's not a bad place to be. I mean, things look like the fortunate countries in Iceland, lots of fish. Oh, yeah, Scotland got lots of fish. Norway's got lots of oil and gas. Scotland's got lots of oil and gas. Switzerland's got lots of financial services. Scotland has lots of financial services. Liechtenstein, I'm not sure what Liechtenstein's got, but it's got financial services as well. It's also a nice place up there. It's people say Liechtenstein. Now, the great advantage of it is it doesn't take 5 years to join, it takes 3 months. So if you adjust your policy and say you'd be an EFTA wants Scotland, I'm toured around the EFTA countries, that's why I've been in Switzerland, to EFTA and they want to sign answers. And ask them directly. Yes, of course, we love that Scotland. There's only 4 countries, and Scotland's a small country, marvelous. And the great advantage is that means you would negotiate from having every EFTA treaty, it's a trading treaty with the rest of the world, with the European Union, and with the UK for that. So instead of negotiating from a position of weakness, you negotiate from a position of strength. But you have to adjust the policy to take account of the new reality. Now, does that mean you never go back to the European Union? You might want to go back to the European Union, but then you negotiate with them from a position of strength. And of course, you have to elect, right? You can't just say, well, go back in, but the key point is you have to adjust the pace for independence to meet the new times. And that applies to EFTA, applies to Europe, applies to pensions, applies to borders, applies to currency. And the good news is, in the 57 pages of the Alba book, all these things are there. That's not, there's some really good news. We had 100,000 Alba books, right? But there's a first edition, which is the conference edition, only a few. So if you can wind up a copy of that edition, but here in Alva, this is the second edition, and there was only about 20,000 of that printed, and it's got an errata. There's 2 missing paragraphs. I'm not going to tell you which page because there's a prize there you can find it. And I'm not going to be a big prize because somebody done did it last night, so I'm stuck with a bottle of whiskey. There won't be a prize or something, then you can find it in the missing paragraphs. All you have to do is look at them online, look at the book, and you find them. Yeah, it was given it. The friend of last semester, a couple of paragraphs, but the good news is, as you all know from your staff collections when you were kids, if there's the erratum, it increases the value of the publication. So you're missing one part, you're buried back. So this Alba edition, which you're all getting, is probably going to be in future really valuable. And when the millionth Alba book runs off the press in a couple of years' time, you'll be able to see Alba edition, where the missing paragraphs near the middle, which is incredibly valuable. But the answers to all these questions are in the Alba book, and there's something really clever. I absolutely adore this. These things. If you do buy a smartphone, so don't bet ask your kids about this, but the but we can just you buy your phone over it and then place it. So I've been talking about EFTA. So if you do that with the EFCA law, it's Jim Sullivan explains the benefits of EFCA, and so on, and all these other issues I've discussed. So it's not just for reading, it's for doing the wee scan and you can see everything. So it's a really interactive thing. Is it the final word of Scottish independence? No, of course it's not. But it's a good start of it. And that's something that Alva has done. Really important. And the third thing you need, if you want to be independent, is you need a strategy for getting. Now, I'm very overwhelmed to see a strategy at the present moment. I don't see one at all. If back in 2011, the SNP, led by me, an overall majority of seats in Scotland on a mandate of a referendum. And in 2012, I got the agreement with David Cameron, Prime Minister, to secure that referendum. So the Edinburgh agreement. And I went through the full range of devices that I used to persuade Cameron that that was the best thing to do. But believe me, they were not holding on. Basically, Cameron believed I wanted to see the referendum. I didn't. He thought that. He also thought that the police coming up. No, I came in just in front of you. I'm more. I was saying, it's almost polite to be a leader. I still want my mum. So I persuaded him I wanted to see the referendum. I didn't. I persuaded him of that. So he thought, oh, I'll stay there. I'm going to do that. The good news, of course, is that Cameron, who was no Einstein, he looked like a prime minister, sounded like a prime minister, acted like a prime minister, and he worked in conjunction with George Osborne, who wasn't the nicest person I've ever met, but nonetheless a clever guy. The pair of them worked together. Now we've got Boris Johnson and Mike Moore. I mean, you've got the party animal and the biscuit. So the good news is what we're facing is not as formative as it was 10 years ago. But even so, if you want to get it, then you've got to have your strategy. And that means you have to set a determined note from the top. If the trumpet sounds an uncertain note, then folk don't know what to do. That means you have to say what you're doing, why you're doing it, and not take no for an answer, because there will be no for an answer. I mean, if even Theresa May was prepared to say, no, it's not the time. If Boris Johnson's going to say, we've got other things to deal with. So you have to say, we're not taking no for an answer. We have to mobilize people to make sure that's it. As it's all done, recently, constitutionally, that's almost what the national movement of Scotland has done. But nonetheless, it has to be determined. And if they won't agree to a section there, which incidentally is not wholly agree of ethics, device that I invented in order to allow a referendum to take place. So in one way, then you organise your own plebiscite. But if you're organising your own plebiscite, then you're going to have to have the cooperation of local government. If you want the cooperation of local government, then you have to have independence majorities of local government. You don't do that as the SNP say by only voting for us. Because the SNP won't be in control of a single local authority in the whole of Scotland because of the proportional system. You have to do what we say, which is to vote Alba one, and then down the list of other independent supporting candidates. My lady wife, well, elected from Nicholas Dublin last week, asked her for money. Even though she's a founder member of Alba. She puts it like Hotel California, and you can't do this. At least you can't do the letters paying for money. She didn't mind that so much, because she's happened before. It was better saying, vote SNP and only SNP, and persuade your friends and family to do the same. As you might understand, Nicholas became umbrage. More than became umbrage about Nicholas' letter. And I'm afraid I'm not sure I'm not going to convince them to go SNP on the list. I think it's good. But you see, the sensible thing is to vote for Alva one and other independent candidates down the list, because you're trying to build an independent majority in local councils, because you might need local councils after Westminster says no to the Section 30 referendum. And then if they say no to the plebiscite, or you can't get councils to back, then what you have to do is say, okay, what are the next election? That's the test. Lots of countries have been independent. Lots of them had referendum, lots of them didn't. But check the back. became the Czech Republic of Slovakia before they ever ended. It was two elections, so they voted different elections. The shoot down and said, James, okay, let's go a separate. But ever to do it, you have to have a determination. And you have to have and what's the political will? Well, political will is a thing that's difficult to define. It's like elephants and evidence health. So, an elephant is a big thing, but it's actually quite difficult to describe from tusk, whatever. Difficult to describe. That one came through your living room door and sat your seat, you know the thing. Well, political will is a bit like, let me give you an example. I was First Minister for a week, and I said to Sir John Elrich, nice man, Permanent Secretary, it's not John, I don't like this term Scots executive. I really don't like it. It makes us sound like a weakness. I think the people have confidence in a Scottish executive. Kill this stuff. Well, in the Scottish government. Is there a problem in changing your name to the Scottish government? They said, well, legislate, all the legislate within the name of the Scottish executive. So I said, well, who sees the legislation? He said, well, there's yourself, Master Sweden, and me. And I said, but the folk see the legislation. He said, no, not really. I said, well, is there anything legal which stops us calling ourselves what we like? And this was years before self-identification became the law. And he said, well, no, there's not. I said, that's great. Send the papers in. I went on the signs in Scotland, big now, this weekend, and put up new signs. Say Scottish government. Now, of course, the unionist parties in the parliament were furious. Long jobs, oops, had Alba Brexit. So this is great occasion. Wonderful. But it happened. And after a week back, even they started calling this the Scottish government. Because they got fed up with saying, well, the Scottish executive killed me such and such, and they laughed at them. So, that's a small example of political. Sometimes in politics depend on that determination. And that determination has to translate itself to the people you expect to support. That's not happening now. But one thing sure, if Alba wins seats in this election in a couple of weeks' time, it'll be like an election shock. Going through the political system and stop. And that's exactly what we're about. We're about providing that political will. In addition to the strategy, in addition to the new case for independence, to enable us to do what we failed to do in 2014, but what we can do again if we've got the determination to reach out and grasp the opportunity. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Who would like to start with some questions for Alan, please? Does anybody shy?
No, I'll start. I'll wait till you see the wee drink. I know. Right, I'm good. Thanks very much for asking. I watched the party election broadcast on TV yesterday. I thought it was fantastic. Really tapped into the mood of what's happening across the country. What's the initial sort of feedback, if any, you've had so far?
Very good. I mean, you saw the broadcast last week. I got sleep. But it's filmed actually someone who this afternoon. It was filmed in one of our candidates, Robert Slavers, Pumpkin, co-French. And what the interesting about it is it was not actors. It was just customers actually. It's Robert's customers, you know. And what we're talking about is fuel bills, electricity. And there's a key point in the focus here. What they're asking the question. Why are we paying sky high electricity bills when we generate electricity 100% thanks to the decision made by our First Minister, name I forget, years back, from wind and hydropower? I mean, the price of wind hasn't gone up. Believe me, it's still not in the last year. But electricity bills go up 50%, they're going to go up 50% at the other. How come we're the only country on earth, given that we produce 5 times as much oil and gas as we consume, and the SOP brings something managed to shut in the North Sea yet? But given that, how come we're the only country when these prices go up, we get poorer? I mean, and so anyway, after the COVID talking about it, the Barton comes to the government and says, no, what happened? International Capital Control their assets, they get the profits, Westminster gets the revenues, and Scots are expecting to pay that balance. And he says it just like that. And that is an absolute game over. If that doesn't even buy it, you must be a best here. To make sure that players don't buy it. Because it absolutely sums up what people are talking about. I've done all these meetings. And it's the funding issue of the times. But the logic is this. Unless we control these resources, instead of benefiting from them, we're going to end up paying for them. And it's not just a question of the past. You know, there's something called the Scotland auction in January. But the Scottish government, who've got now control over the licensing of offshore wind. Offshore wind can produce 500, every 10 times as much electricity in Scotland needs, which is in itself. Why is it important? Well, it costs currently £50 a megawatt hour to produce offshore wind. The nuclear stations that the UK government is proposing to invest in cost £100 and rise. Offshore wind costs £50 and fall. Why is it falling? Because the technology. We don't have data to place turbines, how to stumble to the wind, and the turbines are going to float, which reduces our cost. So that cost is falling all the time. Nuclear costs are rising all the time. Why is it important? Because we don't get out of this. We're going to end up paying for the nuclear electricity at £100 a megawatt hour instead of using our own and selling our own at £50 a megawatt hour. And that's not going to happen for this year, next year, and the price of gas is going to happen for the next generation. In contrast, if we control our natural resources, then we can make that power available, clean, green, renewable, affordable to our population. So why is it relevant? Well, in January, the genius is in the Prime Minister for Scotland, which now reports to the Scottish Parliament, one of the few things we gained from the Smith Commission, decided to sell off the first blocks of auction, to produce about 10 gigawatts of power. Decided to sell off for £600–700 million in a one-off. Even England, who did an auction at the same time, selling live acreage, got an annual payment of 3 times that. So it's a giveaway. Daft, madness. And why is it really culpable? Because if we want to know how to handle this, all we have to do is glance across the cost. Because what Norway did with oil and gas is they made sure they had a public stake in every single oil and gas field that we built up infrastructure from it. There should be a public stake in all the new offshore wind fields, 5%, 10%, whatever percent we decide. They'll still develop because it's the most lucrative business, I was going to say on air, it's in the water, of course, on water at the present moment. And from that public stake, you develop a public energy. And that energy company makes sure that the resources of Scotland benefit the people of Scotland. And this is a pioneering scale. It's been done before. In a smaller scale, without the huge lucrative profits. And it was done by a guy called Tom Johnson, who was MP for here. Tom Johnson was member of Parliament. Tom Johnson, Secretary of State for Scotland during the war. Probably the greatest, or seven. I'm going to say that, that's probably not fair. But the only Secretary of State worth a damn is Scottish. And at the end of the war, he appointed himself chairman of that hydroelectric. And the hydroelectric, under his chairmanship, literally bulldozed the big legs to build the hydropower, and from the hydropower, gave the electricity, the Highlands of Scotland, and what was called the hydro benefit, to make sure that power was affordable for people. The hydro board, of course, as we all know, from SNC, sold off, privatised, and got to the stage when SNC, before Christmas, told their customers, company which was formed to bring power to the people of Scotland at affordable prices. So what they should do is turn the heating down to buffalo. And that's what we've allowed to happen. So what does happen if you don't control your own resources? So what we should do now is take up stake in the offshore wind, the bonanzas come from. Make sure that public shares translated into a public company, and make sure that this energy-rich country doesn't have a third of its population and more funds that it's fuel cost. And that's what broadcasting is about, and that's why I'm doing this.
I thought it was great. Personally, I thought it was really tapped into the mood.
I was going to think that was good because it's you might say one minute. It was deliberately not, what you know, let's say I didn't make that broadcast from, well, I can't listen to where I was, the full professional people who've done different stuff. The fact that it's done with real people gives it an edge and an authenticity. The actors, like the guy who's trying to do that hill, said he broadcast it, think it's going to fall over. But given an authenticity, you would have another piece.
Said that the wind power by 2030 may produce the rest of the pretty much a lot of Scotland. They're saying that the north of the Highlands, which is predominantly Victoria and coast, we're just being in the state. How we could only have it in the state if we were independent.
Well,
really, we got one. Unfortunately, the Protestants and Catholic communities are very much divided, and the votes are. And they still want to lose the Queen as the head of state. And the Catholics, well, they'll vote for independence. So where does that leave us? Leaves us with a very slim chance of getting independence. Like the last time it probably happened. I think we could also solve NHS with 2 pence levy tax and stuff like that. But we can take it, nobody here is enamored with the Tory party, and no, there shouldn't be enamored with them for what they are, and not nice. But they're the establishment, and they have, it's like us, you were talking about the elephant, you just went pinpricking the elephant to these to the establishment. So how do we go about doing that?
Firstly, the good news on the renewable power. The biggest opportunity is offshore Scotland, where we could produce within the next 20 years 10 times. And power is still a great shot. Scotland, we've got a bigger front end shelf in the United States of America. That's one of the great benefits of where we are. We've got a huge continental shelf, stretches up the Atlantic from the North Sea and all the rest of it. Bigger than the USA. And we have 1/4 in our country of the entire wind power resource of Europe. 1/4 of it is in Scotland. It's an amazing opportunity. But you have to control it. If you don't control it, they will control you. And they're not making sure how to do it. Or we should now do that with the second question about the business of Scottish society. When I grew up, West Lothian, right? So I'm familiar with sectarianism because it was prevalent in politics as well as elsewhere in life when I grew up. And when I grew up, by and large, the SNP was more associated with Protestants than with Catholics. And there's a lot of historical reasons for that, because the way the Labour Party developed in Scotland. And I went to see, as you might be, and I went to see Tom Winnie, who's then the Cardinal, Archbishop of Glasgow, and I said, Tom, he was an Archbishop. I was there with kind of public audience, right? And I said, look, how do we go over this? How do we like Scotland? And he said, well, 2 things he said. One, I was a parish priest in Lanarkshire in the 1950s, 60s. And I said, listen, he says, it's nothing like now when it was believed. And the second time he says, buy your beach. And I said, well, what do you mean? He says, well, I'll let you write a column and furnish. This is one for the magazine. And I'm not paying you. That's all right. So I'm not calling the furnish. All that I'm saying is, look, the Catholic community in Scotland went from low support to very high support over that period of time. Probably in the referendum, about 55%. Other communities in Scotland, when I grew up in politics, Asian community in Scotland had a low support for independence. By the time of 2014, 60%, the vote had just been on Asian Scots, we'd be independent. So I don't think, I mean, I was going to say that there's no community in Scotland beyond the reach of the independence test. I mean, I don't know, maybe the Duke of Clue will never vote for such independence. I think we can reconcile the fact that we'll have to do it quite quickly, okay? But if you take away an element of aristocracy, I don't think there's any community that cannot be reached. You know, I'm a Presbyterian lad. I come back from my tradition, but that doesn't stop me reaching out to other traditions and stuff. All societies, every society has differences, divisions, geographical divisions, community divisions, wealth divisions. But Scotland has the strongest sense of national identity, one of the strongest in the whole Europe. And it also has, and this is immeasurably important, a civic tradition of doing things in a democratic, peaceful, developed manner. Your third question is the most important one of all. How do you stop John? Well, I spent 25 years at Westminster. One of the advantages that I had in dealing with them is I was very familiar with them. The establishment looks strong, but it's not really strong. And you can see it in the present moment. We've got Prime Minister who's taught them on the basis he's held a bunch of parties in Downing Street.
There's all sorts of Tories, no matter if you were swimming down the river and just about to go under, there was still a Tory.
Well, but it's you know, 1955, the majority of Scots voted Tory. In the last few elections, you know, lucky to get 20%. Things change. Things change. If I was the Tories, what would most worry me wouldn't it be the fact that Boris Johnson might win? In fact, if I was a Tory, yeah, probably wouldn't be shocked. Would be my estimation. And equally, I'm sometimes told me, what was the SNP are very enthusiastic about Johnson not being Prime Minister. I would just pause and thought. I don't think Johnson's Prime Minister is a bad thing for the independence movement. And the last thing you want is replaced by a competent Tory like Cameron was. So you know, I'm worrying with these things. You know, we have strategy and thinking. Honestly, it's the establishment, it's not as powerful as you might think. It's got holes and divisions within it. Someone said that the great are only great when the rest of us are on our knees. We have the ability in civic society to take Scotland to independence if we so choose. Now, back in 2014, we didn't know that. But look, when I get to politics and said there'd be a Scottish farm, I thought, wow, nobody believed it. You know, I'm not getting politics in 1973, but I said, oh, we're going to get a Scottish farm. And then 2 years later, when we got to Scottish farm, I said, that's it, people run like. Well, after that, I'd be about, in fact, break the electoral system. The Scotland government at that stage, right? So if you think of the distance, and when I signed the end of the agreement with David Cameron, that day, you know, was I think a YouGov poll showing support for independence at 10%. Didn't seem to be the most auspicious circumstances. But I knew if we developed the case and got momentum going, provided the opportunity, provided the leadership to push that up. And a week before the referendum, the establishment, so powerful, suspended Prime Minister's pensions, or ran up to Scotland to separate ways, the three illegals, because they were panicking. It's rather likely that then David Cameron says that he was, well, it doesn't say he was soiling his briefs. And what we've got to do is work out how we create that opportunity. And I am absolutely certain that Alba and the case we're presenting and the tactics we want to evolve and the strategy we're trying to inject into the system has an important role in doing that. And I'm delighted to say that with 111 candidates in Scotland, including our 2 candidates here in the wee print, I think we've got a cracking chance of doing exactly that in a couple of weeks' time. You found this finder. I believe you. This is what happened to me last night. I thought confidently what he said. Just gonna when he talks about currents, also the 55 about civilization, then 20 about driving license.
Yeah.
I want to ask you, what's your opinion with regards to Scottish agreement, whether Scottish government it can add money to the case for campaigning for independence? Because you say that let's say maybe they're taking the alleged naturalizing, what I mean is to become British. They allege taking the allegiance of the Queen, you can only read in English or Welsh. Why not Scottish government? It is not there.
But there will be a Scottish Guard condition of the Alba. We're just not going into it yet. We're going to have other issues, and do what we want in Polish, for so that all communities have access. But Gaelics, the fourth part of Scotland, and around Westminster, I nourished the Gaelic community. Not because I can do Alba, Scotland, I speak Ireland. But I still, went to the Gaelic College of Skye. I still enabled them to do their work because things of value should be preserved and protected and should be cherished. But Scottish identity is interesting. I've got a couple of regrets about being First Minister, things I should have done in them. And one of them is Scottish history. I should have insisted on new modules of Scottish history in school. And there was a good reason I didn't do it, and that was that they just introduced curriculum for excellence. And all the teachers I knew, including my 2 sisters, said to me, listen, we've had this change, that change, the next change, the following change. We don't know if we're coming or going. And I was thinking to myself, well, if I introduce another change, we'll see it rather. So I did it. I should have. There's nothing more important and more enlivening and enlightening and stimulating for kids to know about history. I mean, probably be look at the hugely successful series. That one helped me. The Netflix one, the one that's the American one. Outland. That was written by an American who's never been to Scotland. She's written it. You get a world-dominating series. Somebody who never been to the country that was caught up in the romance and intrigue and right about it. So you just imagine how stimulating that would be. And the things that folk don't know about Scottish history. My grandfather took around the wines and alleyways of Ludgate. He was a town plumber and taught me Scottish history. Like not from my grandfather's knee, but from walking behind him as his wee apprentice. So he pointed to things and say, yeah, that's where Bruce's men recouped Ludgate Castle as it was then, with a hay swale and great, And he said to me, he says, and he told me everybody who came part. He said the Grants were there, the Andersons, the Oliphants, the Salmons, of course, the Bamburys. Well, Oliphants was the local baker. So my mind's eye said, these boys must have been in the bakers, dust themselves down and charging up to retake Ludgate Castle. I was taught history from my grandfathers. But not everybody gets that opportunity, and therefore you have to adapt it to the modern world. But what a history, what a culture, what a society, what a heritage we have. So I wish if I had my time again, if I had my time to come, who knows? I will do that, because that's something to cherish and to allow.
That's nice, thank you. I want to ask you something else. We've got an SNP Control Council, we've got an SNP NSP, who's the Justice Minister, and we've got an SNP MP. Why therefore is it that we have in every single town in this county children living in poverty with statistics that are utterly shameful. And some of the streets that I've walked, 4 and 5 out of 10 children literally live in poverty. And we have the shame also of the working poor, the folk that go out to work, that, you know, whether it was 0 hours contracts, part-time wages, whatever it is, they qualify for university credit, even though they're drafting and busting their gut on a daily basis. How can it possibly be that we're still living that way? The SNP run the show around about here, and if you were me and you became elected as a councillor here in Claremanshire, what would you be doing? What would you tell me to do to knock a bit of shape into things and start addressing all of these horrible issues that people live with on a daily basis?
Well, I would campaign for what's in the program, the one that I want to share with you. This is a 5-point practical plan to deal with exactly this. It's been most practically breakfast and lunches for all children, schools, university. And then you can guarantee that every child will get nourishment. I'm not talking about the school parent, right through. And do it properly. You know, do it with the best food stuffs in Scotland, with the best chefs in Scotland doing the menus, and teach the kids where the food comes from. Hopefully grow mustard their own. You know, so do it as part of an education.
But that was always done in schools anyway. I think that a lot of problems are people who don't work. And they get money from the state to do nothing, and they're on maybe 3rd generation. They've got money for their cigarettes, they've got money for their drinks, and their kids are not being properly looked after, not being properly clothed, fed. That to me is a huge problem.
Well, parenting education might be as important as education there. But if we do the school breakfast and lunches, which we don't do.
Well, that's benefiting the children, obviously.
So do it directly. Well, we're waiting for the parents to get their needs food on
I
the
don't
right
know
way.
how that's going to be sorted. The parents get the money and not using it as they should.
I want to tell you, solving the problems of society is a long-term business.
Of course.
And you have to perhaps, education has more of a role in that. In fact, you know, I did the citizenship classes. Somebody once told me, there's a lady boy, 2 words in Fraserburgh, right? I was doing a tour as the MP. And it was one of the younger feminists. And he said, you know, most of them were involved. And I said, well, they're probably, you know, disillusioned, discouraged, no interest. He said, no, it's fine to know. He said, when you and I were young, our first vote, our parents would take us out to vote. My dad couldn't get a vote with me. He says, most of these apprentices don't have parents who vote. Many of them don't have parents. Now, that's why I got attracted to the idea of citizenship classes, and people should vote first in schools instead. That's only one aspect of a much wider problem that you point to. But one aspect you can absolutely guarantee, if we do the school breakfast, the school meals, and making community events and make sure every child has access to 2 decent meals a day, and decent meals, not top price meals, a decent agreement, ingredients, and the whole panoply of where it comes from, why it's nourishing, why it's important, then we'll make a bit of progress in that direction. Will it change the habits of dissolute parents? No. But we'll make sure it's an immediate thing that can be done, and it can be done, that happens, and we'll know that's being done. Well, we puzzle out how to make folk better, which is a worthwhile cause, but it's a cause that will take some time to reverse trends in society. Incidentally, last week, well, 2 weeks ago, I was out COVID. I spent that time watching daytime television. One of the things we should do is take these programs on air. Because I'm going to sit and watch some of them, not obviously some of them, thank goodness. In terms of what you should and could, hopefully would be done with communicating information, knowledge, and it's lowest common denominator stuff to any degree. So there's lots of things hopefully to do with society. But in the meantime, we get the kids fed. That would be a good start.
So that's Alex. Series piece for the Alva. We have a book launch. We've got to try and get a wee exclusive There we go. You're on Tweet Street. You're not live.
All right. Hi.
So this is Denise Finlay, Fresh Brody for Twitter. How you doing?
Yeah, great. Everything's going well. I'm going there next, yeah. And just to let you know that Alba will protect women's rights and women's safe spaces. We can do it from the council chamber. So vote for your Alba candidate and save women's rights and save the rights for girls as well and their education.
Thanks very much,
Do it.
Denise.
Vote Alba.
There you go. Denise Finlay. Right. So this is got to be going on Tweet Street, right? So this is the Posh and Becks, the Alba party. As Big Andy coined them last week. Well, there's doubts about they two. Right, so we've been invited along to Alva, a lovely place to see Alex Salmon and listen to Alex Salmon, but it was Eva and Matt that put this event on. So how do you think it went?
I think it went really well here. Like to see Alec again, and people, and I met some really interesting people I never knew stuff about today. They can speak Russian and French and Gaelic.
Well, there you go. Right, so what's the word you're running in, Matt, just for our audience?
Matt's running in Clackmannanshire South, which is Alba, and I'm running in Clackmannanshire North, which is Alva, the jewel in the crown of Clackmannanshire, and Tillycoochry, Devon Side and Coastmoreton. And we're looking forward to promoting independence, because obviously Alba stands for independence, which we want to see made an urgent priority, particularly because of the cost of living crisis, the fuel crisis, and the terrible circumstances that so many people in Scotland are having to endure unnecessarily in a country that is brimming over with potential, and yet a quarter of our people live in poverty. And it's time, well past time, that we put all of that into history. Make Scotland the place it should be.
Here. So I just want to say good luck with Tweet Street to both of you, and hopefully we're back here in a couple of weeks' time celebrating 2 new councillors in Scotland. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Right, that's all. So this is Tweet Street on location at the Wallace Monument. Came to the Alba launch, the wee Alba book. So we're at the Wallace Monument for the launch of the wee Alba book. Tweet Street on location. We're at Alva. Like manager, we have a bit launch earlier on, so we're just in a wee bit for a bit this area. So this is the Wallace Monument. This is the Alba book. This is the Independence in the book. So that's pretty much it for Tweet Street on location. We're just stopping in the Wallace Monument now. So if you Tweet Street on location, should we go?